have to lose weight. No, I see myself, eating healthy and exercising and enjoying that process. Right? It's not a should. It's a must or a want. Does that make sense? Nobody likes to be should on. So let's make sure that saying, if I said I hope I can or if I can, that creates what? Is that certainty or doubt? Doubt. Right? So I know I can. I'm going to do this. It lights you up when you do this stuff enough. And I know it sounds hokey, but the reality is it works. All right? So that's why affirmations have been around for such a long time. If I don't do this, again, it's a threat. I feel I'm in a threatened state. That creates stress. So I'll do my best. Right? So, again, because you never fail. You set yourself up for success. So that's Max Mind. You can't prevent stress. Stress prevention is, it's a impossible thing because we all have stress all of the time. But what you can do is recognize what your body cues are and what your body tends to do when it's under stress and how to function and deal better. So those affirmations, and I'm not going to go through more, but there's lots of them out there. So Google some affirmations that work for you, that make sense for you. That you say, you know what, when I hear that or when I see that, that makes sense. Find videos, find podcasts, find things that are going to light you up and put you in a positive state because the world tries to pull you down, so you got to get out of that. All right. Hanging out with positive people. You're going to be like the people that you hang around with the most. So if you're hanging around with achievers, you're going to achieve more. If you're hanging around with people who are connected, you're going to connect more. If you're hanging around with people who are angry, it's going to make you angry. If you're hanging out just by yourself, then you're going to have a suffering life. Because a lot of people don't like themselves, and that's the reality. And you've got to create who you want to be, and recognize that you're a work in progress. Spend more time laughing both at yourself and living in gratitude. Doing things like chess or Sudoku or things that will challenge your brain are not only a social outlet if you're using games with other people, but also it's a way to keep your neuroplasticity going. And there's more and more scientific ones, so if you have the phones and you want to do the apps that are there are ones that actually train your brain to work in different ways. All right, so I'm going to get into essential number 2 right now, and that's maximizing your nerve supply. So we're going to talk about form equaling function. Your brain is, again, like not only a transmitter but a receiver. And in this MRI, this is actually looking at how the brain talks to the body, because we all tend to think that the brain ends over here. And even though anatomically we say, okay, this is where the medulla and pons are, and then it becomes a spinal cord, do you see any kind of break right there? It's all the same thing. This is just the tail extension of your brain. It works like one organ. So how do you know if you have a bad brain-body connection? Well, in children, not only things like ADD, ADHD, but also, again, digestive issues. Did you know that when you wake up in the morning, you have more cells in your body that are not human, that are not your own, than you have your own cells? From a DNA standpoint, there are more microorganisms, there are over 100 trillion bugs that live, or supposed to, in your gut that are responsible for your immune system, that are responsible for certain hormones. You actually make more serotonin in your gut than you do in your brain, far more. So keeping a healthy gut is paramount to having a healthy brain. And if you have digestive issues, sure enough, you have some brain issues forming and some inflammation forming. Skin is another way to tell if you've got some brain inflammation happening. So people who have eczema or psoriasis or other skin issues oftentimes have inflammation inside their body. Ear infections, just a sign that your body is susceptible to viruses. The virus or the bacteria don't cause the infection. It's the body's inability to deal with that virus. How many of us have viruses in our body right now? We all do. We'd be dead without them. How many of us have bacteria in our body? We just talked about it. We've got more bacteria than human DNA, and we also have cancer cells in our body. So it's not about the invading agent. It's about how our bodies adapt or resist them. All right? As we go on, things like autoimmune issues, again, is a sign that your gut, immune system, brain is off. And then, if your body's under inflammation, are more likely to have headaches or pains or things like that. So a lot of people come in here thinking that they have just pop my back. Turns out to be a gross systemic inflammatory issue that needs to be dealt with. All right? One major cause of inflammation in today's day and age has to do with trauma. Now, I know that a lot of you aren't thinking, well, this isn't traumatic. You know, if I get into a car accident, that's a trauma. But again, whether I carry a 500-pound weight out here, immediately I'll fail, or a 5-pound weight over the course of time. If I have this 10-pound bowling ball in this position, just 30 degrees down, and a lot of you are worse than that, it's 40 pounds of pressure on your head and neck muscles. So now, can someone grab me one of the 40-pound, I want to put it on someone's head. Yeah, right. So, so if I put a 40-pound weight on your head, you would not like it very much. And so if you're stuck in this position, reading, writing, texting, and who does that besides us adults? And that's my real worry, is that we've developed, when we were crawling as babies, a good curve in our neck, and we grow up, and then we got our devices later on in life, right? And we started to do this more after we had developed muscle tone back here. But kids who are given these Game Boys and these devices when they're 3, 4, 5 years old, who are now training their spinal cord in this position, are they growing up healthier or sicker? For sure. And so we have to watch that out as parents, as grandparents. I mean, everyone, if I see you out in these seats over here, and you're on your phone, how many of you experienced me doing your text neck correction? Right? So I'll tell you, put your phone up, rest your elbows on your rib cage, make sure you're not doing this. I will take my kids' devices away from them if I see them in bad posture, and just a pre-warning. All right, counteract the negative. So sitting is, they say sitting is the new smoking. And the reason why is because the joints of your spine have 90% of the stimulation of certain parts of your brain. I want to say that again. Whether the joints of your spine move or are sedentary accounts for up to 90% of the stimulation a brain gets every day. So, by making you sit here right now, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. But so you know, for a few bucks, you can get not one of these great desks, but you can get like a Versa desk. You can raise your computer screen up so that it's more ergonomic. If you're sitting and driving, keep your head against the headrest. So there's lots of things that you can do to reduce the amount of stress on your body. You can move around. If you're sitting at a computer, get up every 15 minutes, move around. Your boss won't mind because you'll actually be more productive by moving around every 15 minutes for just 30 seconds than you will by sitting all day like a zombie. Sitting and watching television for hours and hours at a time, your blood and your nerves get stagnant and your brain shuts down. So this is a neurophysiologist, Dr. Irvin Kaur, said the spinal cord as an organizer of disease. Now this is not a chiropractor. He said the spinal cord is an organizer of disease, which means that if you're going to have disease in an organ, first it has to be patterned in the nerves. Right? He said the spine and its muscles have 90% of the connections of the brain and the nervous system. And then a Nobel Prize for this study, Roger Sperry, said 90% of the stimulation and nutrition to the brain is generated by movement of the spine. So for those of you who are getting adjusted, know that it's a whole lot bigger than back pain, okay? Dr. Havoc and Dr. Murphy said cervical adjustments increase the neuroplasticity of your brain and reduce sympathetic tone. What does that mean? Well, again, there's a fight in your brain constantly for parasympathetic, which is relaxation, versus sympathetic, which is fight or flight. Now, is fight or flight bad? No. If you're being chased, you know, by someone with a knife and they're running after you, do you want your blood pressure to go up? Yeah. Yeah. You know, you want your blood going to those extremities so that you can get out of there, or like me, turn around and just take them out. Right? That's the fight part. But for most of you, it would be the flight. Now, when it comes to most people, though, we've talked about before, if you're in fight or flight all the time, it's like trying to sprint your life as a marathon. Right? You can't sprint forever. Your body then burns out. The hormone receptors burn out, and your brain burns out. Its ability to use glucose properly burns out, and eventually you're creating inflammation in your brain, and your brain starts to shrink and atrophy. Right? So keeping your mind on more parasympathetic tone or more relaxation is critical. Doing your stress out zones in sprints. In Silicon Valley, they invented something called the Pomodoro Technique, which means you're working for anywhere from 17 minutes to about 30 minutes, and then resting for anywhere from about 5 to 12 minutes. And in those sprints, you can actually get a Pomodoro clock on your devices and things like that that'll actually warn you. It's a little tomato, and it kind of clicks down, 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 and it says, okay, get up and move, or get out of state so that you can get back into it. All right. Another way that you can, how do you know if you're in sympathetic or parasympathetic tone? We use, I have this thing called a heart math, and heart math is a very scientific way of analyzing your body's heart rate variability. And heart rate variability is the sort of the keystone marker for if your body is in sympathetic or parasympathetic state. There are other devices, like I wear this one constantly, and it's called a Whoop, and it's my HRV daily, so I can take a look on my phone to see if my body is willing to or able to handle more stress, if I can do a hard workout, or if I have to keep it easy because of my heart rate variability for that day. So knowing your HRV score is super important there as well. Happy to do an HRV check on anybody who wants one, and or get yourself a device. It's really important, especially in the morning. It's actually a massive predictor for heart issues and for other issues as well. All right. So this one right here, this Journal of the American Geriatrics back in 2004 said persons, but people with hyperkyphosis had a 44% increased mortality rate. Hyperkyphosis is this. If you see people with a curve on their back that sticks their head out like this, it means that that part of the spine's not moving, and that part of the spine is huge when it comes to stimulating parasympathetic tone or relaxed tone. So that's why Devin's back there. He's doing things with the double lacrosse balls in terms of mobility, making sure that that people don't have forward head posture, the computer postures, right, or the driving posture. If I look at someone's posture from the side and I see this, okay, they're thinking, oh, my back hurts. I'm thinking, oh, you're in trouble. So keep your posture. There's more and more research on the functional neurology of your posture. Right? And there's some references for you science geeks who just want to see that this is real deal stuff. All right, so here's a case study. His name is Derek, and as you can see over here, he had a high left shoulder. He had a forward head shift right there. So where would he have been in 20, 30 years? Is this going to be normal neurology or abnormal neurology? Abnormal neurology, abnormal physiology. His body's not going to work properly. His head was out there. He was diagnosed with headaches. He had trouble focusing in school and attention span. They wanted to put him on Ritalin or one of those, or Adderall, which is it's a Schedule II narcotic if you didn't know. Right? So what ends up happening, it's basically like cocaine for the brain. How many kids are cocaine deficient? Any kids walking around and saying, you know what, I was walking around and I fell and all the cocaine fell out of my body. I need to be supplanted back in. Right? So in an ADHD brain, or a brain that has trouble focusing, it's oftentimes not an overactive brain, it's an underactive brain, which is why they use stimulants. Does that make sense? Why would they use stimulants on a brain that's already overactive? So that's why those kids are running around and they're looking at things, they're looking for more visual, auditory, kinesthetic, whatever information they can get to their brain so they can feel normal. But the trouble is this spine going to move properly? No. So since 90% of the gross stimulation of the brain is coming from the what? The spine, then it actually shuts down emotions, it shuts down movement, it shuts down stimulation, and so you can't fix a physical problem with a chemical solution if it's a physical problem. So we know about micro traumas, which are posture, but then there's macro traumas too, right? And everyone knows that a bad car accident can affect your spine, but did you know that MTBIs, mild traumatic brain injuries, are actually one of the worst and most researched thing in the last couple of years? They're showing how kids, if they have an MTBI, whether it's through, soccer is actually the worst, then football, lacrosse, most of them are created mild, okay? So they looked at this study of over about 18,000 kids, and they showed that the vast majority of them are subclinical, which means they might feel dizzy for an hour or something, but then they go back to normal. But then they run a diffuse MRI or a DTI MRI where they're looking at the the vascularity and the damage in the brain. And there is in the prefrontal cortex right there, which is responsible for memory, cognition, there's damage right there. There's actually ischemia and loss of blood flow to part of this child's brain because of one heading the soccer ball. So if you have kids who play soccer or football or wrestling or are involved in sports where their head is at risk, right? That's how I got involved, in my first trauma that I had with with wrestling. So, so just keep in mind, who should have their spine and nervous system checked at some point in their life? Everyone with a spine and a nervous system. So if you know somebody with a spine, and so there's different ways to screen for it. You can do a SPECT scan, or you can do a DTI MRI. They range anywhere from around $3,000 to $5,000. You can do a functional MRI, which is around $2,000 to $3,000. Or we're going to be doing something over here with these little spit tests. So you're all going to be spitting in your hand and putting it there. One of the key indicators for the vascularity or the blood flow to your brain is how much nitric acid is floating around in your body. So we're going to be giving you a little test strip. Sure, you can give it now. And you guys are going to hold on to it. At the very end, we'll show you what that is supposed to look like. So if you guys want to start handing those out, that'd be great. And you can do the spit test, see if the blood flow to your brain is doing great. If it's not doing great, by looking at the amount of nitric acid that's or nitric oxide that's going on inside your body.
You could point to as proof that the human being is not smart. The helmet is my personal favorite. The fact that we had to invent the helmet. Now, why did we invent the helmet? Well, because we were participating in many activities that would wreck in our heads. We looked at the situation. We chose not to avoid these activities, but to just make little plastic hats